6 months of deceit. How I found out my wife was sleeping with her boss. My name is Robert Crane, but everyone calls me Bob. I'm 32, and I live in a small town just outside Philadelphia. By day, I'm a forensic accountant, one of those quiet, behind-the-scenes types who digs into financial records to uncover fraud, embezzlement, and everything in between. To the outside world, I'm just another number-crunching accountant at a large firm. But for those who really know me, I'm something of an expert. I've helped the FBI with a few cases, unraveling financial trails that others couldn't even begin to follow. I don't talk about my work much outside the office. There's a level of detachment I've learned to maintain. But my life outside of work has always been something I thought I could control. My wife, Kelly, and I had been together since college. We were the perfect couple, or at least that's what I always thought. We met back at the University of Pennsylvania during freshman year. I was sitting alone, waiting for the first day of classes, when I saw her walk in. Kelly was beautiful, but not in an obvious way. She had this quiet elegance about her, tall, slender, with strawberry blonde hair that fell in waves over her shoulders, the kind of beauty that made people look twice, but only if they knew what to look for. I was struck by her immediately. It took me weeks to work up the courage to talk to her. And when I finally did, I made a fool of myself. But somehow she laughed, genuinely laughed. And from there, everything fell into place. We were inseparable from that point on. After graduation, we moved in together. Kelly got into law school and I took a job at a big firm. My career took off almost immediately. We got married a few years later, and before I knew it, we were living in our first home in Doylestown. It was a modest house, 3 bedrooms, one of which doubled as an office. Our plan was to settle in, have kids, and live the American dream. And for the most part, that's exactly what we were doing. But on a random April afternoon, everything changed. The day had been rainy, one of those days where the sky seems heavy and oppressive. I had just finished mowing the lawn and was about to head inside to take a shower when I heard voices. I wasn't surprised. Kelly's best friend, Olivia, had been over earlier. What did surprise me, though, was what I heard. I had reached the top of the stairs, hand on the doorknob, when I heard Kelly's voice, clear as day. "I think it's finally time," she said, her tone light, almost excited. "Hogan and I decided to start trying for a baby." I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. The news wasn't a shock. We'd been talking about having a family for months, but what came next shattered my entire world. Olivia responded with a laugh, the kind that made my blood run cold. "That's wonderful, Kelly. But what about Paul?" Paul. The name sent a chill down my spine. I knew who she was talking about. Paul Evans, Kelly's boss. He was a big deal in the DA's office, a political animal with ambitions that stretched far beyond his current position. "What do you mean?" Kelly asked, her voice betraying a hint of nervousness. "I mean, what are you going to do with him? You can't just end it with him like that. He'll want more." There was a brief silence before Kelly spoke again. "I already told Paul that I'm ending the affair. He doesn't mind. Once the senator steps down, he thinks he has a real chance at running for office. It's that simple." My stomach dropped. I didn't need to hear any more. 3 sentences had completely destroyed my world. Kelly had been having an affair with her boss, Paul Evans, the man I had trusted, the man she had always spoken about with such admiration. I had to sit down. My head was spinning, my heart racing. Kelly, the woman I loved, the woman I was about to start a family with, had betrayed me in the most intimate way possible. The next moments felt like they passed in slow motion. Kelly and Olivia continued talking, oblivious to my presence. I wanted to confront her, to scream at her, to demand answers. But I couldn't move. My body felt like it was made of stone, frozen in disbelief. I had known there was something off, something I couldn't put my finger on, but I had never imagined this. I had trusted her. We had built our life together, and now everything felt like a lie. After a long moment, I finally found the strength to move. I forced myself to open the door and walk into the kitchen, pretending like nothing had happened. Kelly and Olivia were sitting at the table, sipping tea, as if everything was normal. Kelly looked up at me, concern in her eyes. "Honey, are you okay?" she asked, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. I forced a smile, but I could feel the tears welling up behind my eyes. "Just allergies," I muttered, wiping my face. "Bad spring." I couldn't stand to be around her, but I couldn't leave, not yet. Not without confronting the betrayal that had shattered my world. The next morning, I did what I've always done when faced with a problem: kept my emotions in check. I left the house early, telling Kelly I had an important meeting in the city. The truth was, I needed to escape. I needed to think. I needed to put some distance between myself and the woman I had trusted with my heart, my future, and my family. As I sat in the car, heading into Philadelphia, my mind raced. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I didn't know. The affair with Paul hadn't just been a one-time slip-up. It had been an ongoing relationship, something Kelly had kept hidden from me for months. The lies, the betrayal were suffocating. But worse than that, she had planned to have a baby with me, knowing full well that her loyalties were elsewhere. I had to understand more. I couldn't just confront her without proof, without evidence. I had no physical signs of the affair, no secret emails, no unusual behavior, nothing. It was all just whispers in my mind. And whispers weren't enough to justify what I was feeling. I tried to push the anger down. I tried to focus on work, to throw myself into numbers and spreadsheets, but it wasn't working. Every time I looked at a report, I saw Kelly's face. Every time I thought about the next meeting with a client, I heard her laugh in my ear. Every time I sat down at my desk, I imagined her in Paul's arms, the man who had been manipulating her for months. That evening, I returned home late. Kelly had already gone to bed. Couldn't sleep. The house, once a place of comfort, now felt like a prison. I got up and went to the kitchen. I opened the fridge, pulling out a bottle of water. My mind wandered back to that conversation I had overheard between Kelly and Olivia. The words echoed in my head. "Paul doesn't mind." How could she say that so casually? How could she speak about the man she had been sleeping with, the man who had destroyed everything between us, with such indifference? I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers. I sat down in front of my computer, opening up Kelly's personal laptop. I knew it was a long shot, but I had to check. If there was even a shred of evidence, anything that could confirm my suspicions, I needed to find it. But as I searched through the files, the emails, the pictures, I found nothing. There was no smoking gun, no hidden messages, no incriminating photos. It was as if Kelly had covered her tracks perfectly. Frustrated, I slammed the laptop shut. The anger that had been building inside of me now reached a boiling point. What was I supposed to do? Confront her without evidence? What if I was wrong? What if I was just imagining things? I couldn't let her get away with this. I needed a plan. The next day at work, I went over the details of the affair in my head again. Kelly had confessed to ending things with Paul, but something about her words didn't sit right with me. "Cold turkey," she had said, as if cutting him off was as simple as flipping a switch. But I knew better. I had worked in forensic accounting long enough to know that nothing was ever as simple as it seemed. There had to be more. There had to be something I could use to expose the truth. And then it hit me. Kelly had told me about a political announcement party at Paul's house. a big event where he was making his move to run for higher office. She had been invited, and of course, she had insisted that we go together. I knew this was my chance. This was the moment where everything could change. I had to go. I had to see Paul's face when he realized I knew the truth. I had to confront him, even if it meant facing Kelly's wrath. That night, Kelly and I arrived at Paul's mansion in Washington Crossing, just in time for the big announcement. The air was thick with tension, but no one seemed to notice. They were too busy fawning over Paul, praising him for his political ambitions, for his role in the community. But all I could see was the man who had been sleeping with my wife. I wanted to confront him right then and there, but I couldn't. The atmosphere was too public, too dangerous. Instead, I kept my distance, observing from the sidelines, trying to gather my thoughts. It wasn't long before I saw her, Barbara Evans, Paul's daughter. She was stunning, like a vision from a dream, but her beauty was nothing compared to the anger I felt building inside me. This was her father's daughter, the woman whose father had ruined my life. She approached me, and despite my inner turmoil, I couldn't help but notice how she was dressed, how she looked. She had the same piercing green eyes as her father, but the smile she gave me didn't match the coldness in her gaze. "You look great," she said, her tone soft, almost too sweet. "Kelly always talked about you. You're the accountant, right?" I nodded, but I could feel the walls going up. Barbara leaned in, her voice lower now. "You should really come to more of our parties, you know? You never know who you might meet." I felt a strange unease settle in my stomach. There was something about Barbara that didn't sit right with me. I knew she was his daughter, but she seemed just as cold and calculating as Paul. Kelly wasn't far behind, and before I could say anything else, she appeared at my side, greeting Barbara with a warmth I had never seen in her before. I watched them interact, and for the first time I felt completely out of place. Kelly was no longer the woman I had married. She was someone else. Someone who had betrayed me, someone who had been hiding behind a mask for years. I had to leave. I couldn't be around them any longer. But the evening was far from over, and in the back of my mind, I knew something was coming. Something that would change everything. The days that followed the party felt like a blur. I couldn't shake the image of Kelly and Barbara laughing together, their voices ringing with a familiarity that made my stomach turn. I spent most of my time at work trying to focus on the reports in front of me, but the thought of Kelly's betrayal gnawed at my insides. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't just about an affair. There were layers to this, layers of lies, manipulation, and hidden agendas that I had never imagined. I couldn't trust Kelly anymore. That much was clear. But I also couldn't leave. Not yet. I needed something more. Something that would give me the upper hand. Something I could use to get out of this mess. Then, 2 days later, Barbara appeared at my office unannounced. My secretary had let her in, and by the time I had turned around, she was standing in the doorway, her auburn hair cascading down her back, her expression unreadable. "Hey, Hogan," she greeted me, her voice soft but carrying an edge of something I couldn't quite place. I rose from my desk, offering a smile that felt more like a reflex than anything genuine. "Barbara," I said, nodding. "What brings you here?" She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. There was a brief moment of awkward silence before she spoke again. "I need to talk to you about something," she said, her tone suddenly serious. I raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" Barbara glanced around the room before locking eyes with me. "You already know about my father and Kelly," she said bluntly. My heart skipped a beat as I stood frozen. How much did she know? How much had she figured out? Yes, I stammered, trying to keep my composure. What do you want from me? Barbara took a deep breath. I want to help you, she said, her voice surprisingly calm. I've been watching what's going on, and I don't like it. I don't like what my father is doing. I don't like what Kelly's doing. And I don't like that you're being dragged into it. I stared at her, unsure of what to make of this. Was she trying to manipulate me? Was this some kind of trick? Or was she truly on my side? What do you mean? I asked, my voice low. Barbara took a seat across from me. Her eyes filled with a mixture of frustration and resolve. I know about the affair, she said, her words cutting through the air like a knife. I know everything, and I'm not okay with it. She paused, her gaze unwavering. But it's not just the affair that bothers me. It's everything. The lies, the manipulation, the way my father has used people to get ahead. I was taken aback. This wasn't what I had expected. Barbara wasn't acting like the daughter of a powerful man. She wasn't defending her father or trying to cover up the truth. She was angry. She was disgusted. Why are you telling me this? I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. Barbara leaned forward, her eyes hardening. Because I want to help you take him down. I want to help you destroy his career. And I think you need to know the truth about what he's been doing. Not just to you, but to everyone around him. My mind raced. Could I trust her? Could I really take her at her word? The daughter of the man who had been sleeping with my wife? The daughter who had watched her mother suffer in silence while her father climbed the political ladder? Barbara must have seen the doubt in my eyes because she spoke again, her voice softer this time. I'm not doing this for you, Hogan, she said. I'm doing this for me, and for my mother, and for everyone my father has hurt. She reached into her bag and pulled out a stack of photos. I've got proof. I've got everything you need to bring him down, and I'm giving it to you. She handed the photos to me, her hands trembling slightly as I took them. I looked down at the pictures, my breath catching in my throat. They were photographs of Paul Evans, taken without his knowledge, engaging in what could only be described as inappropriate behavior with various women. Some of the photos showed him with Kelly. Others showed him with women I didn't recognize. But all of them told the same story. Paul was not the man he pretended to be. I felt a surge of anger, but it was quickly replaced by something else. Something darker. This was it. This was the evidence I had been looking for. This was my chance to take control of my life again. But as I looked at Barbara, I realized that this wasn't just about revenge. It was about something much bigger, something much more dangerous. Why are you doing this? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Barbara met my gaze, her eyes cold and resolute. Because I'm done letting my father destroy everyone around him. And because, frankly, I think you deserve to know the truth. I stood up, the weight of what she had just given me sinking in. I didn't know what to do with all of this information, but I knew one thing for sure. My life was about to change. Barbara left my office soon after, leaving me with the photographs and the weight of the decision I now had to make. The next few days were a blur of meetings, phone calls, and tense conversations. I couldn't stop thinking about what Barbara had said, and I couldn't stop thinking about the power I now held in my hands. But even as I plotted my next move, something gnawed at me. What was Barbara's real game here? Was she really trying to help me? Or was she just using me to get back at her father? Couldn't be sure. But one thing was certain. I was about to make a decision that would change everything. The days that followed Barbara's visit were filled with confusion and tension. I spent every waking moment trying to process everything she had revealed. She had handed me the key to bring Paul Evans down, the man who had been the source of all my suffering. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being played. Barbara was too calm, too controlled. There had to be something more to this. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I had no choice but to trust her. She had provided the evidence, the photos that could ruin Paul's career, and the stories of his manipulation and deceit. If I could use them properly, everything would change. I could expose him, destroy his political ambitions, and end his reign of terror over Kelly and me. But there was still the issue of Kelly. Even now, as I held the photos, I couldn't bring myself to feel the sense of triumph I thought I'd have. The reality was that everything had changed between us. The foundation of our marriage had crumbled. The woman I thought I knew, the one I was about to have a child with, had betrayed me in ways I couldn't even comprehend. I had to confront her. I had to find out if there was any chance at salvaging what we once had, or if it was already too late. That evening, after work, I came home earlier than usual. Kelly was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping a cup of tea. She looked up as I entered, a smile playing on her lips, but it was strained just like everything else. "Hi, honey," she said, her voice too sweet, too innocent. "How was your day?" I said nothing. Instead, I went straight to the counter and picked up the stack of photographs Barbara had given me. Kelly's smile faltered when she saw them. "Where did you get these?" she asked, her voice suddenly tight. "Don't play dumb, Kelly," I replied, my voice low but firm. "I know everything. About you and Paul. About the affair. About everything." Her face drained of color. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then, finally, she spoke, her voice trembling. "Bob, how long?" I interrupted her, my heart pounding. "How long have you been seeing him?" Kelly lowered her eyes, unable to meet my gaze. 6 months, she whispered. "It started before we even talked about having a baby. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did. And I couldn't stop it. I wanted to scream. I wanted to yell at her, to accuse her of ruining everything. But instead, I stood there, silent, as the weight of her betrayal crushed me. I had spent years of my life building a future with this woman, and now everything was a lie. "I tried to end it," Kelly continued, her voice breaking, "but I couldn't just walk away. Paul is powerful. He's convincing. I got caught up in it. I thought maybe if I gave him what he wanted, I could make it stop. But it never stopped, Bob. And now I'm pregnant, and I can't undo everything I've done." I felt my stomach turn. She was pregnant. She was carrying my child. But she had been sleeping with Paul the entire time. The man who had used his power to manipulate her, to twist her loyalty until it snapped. And now I had to decide what to do with all of this. "Do you love him?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Kelly shook her head quickly, tears welling in her eyes. "No, Bob, I don't love him. I love you. I always have. I didn't know what I was doing. It was a mistake. I was weak. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to take her in my arms and forgive her. But how could I? How could I ever trust her again after everything that had happened? How could I be sure that she wasn't going to do this to me again? "I don't know what to say," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "How do I move forward from this? How do I live with the fact that my wife has been cheating on me for months with the man I thought was my friend?" Kelly reached out to me, her hands trembling. "Please, Bob, don't leave me. I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. I swear I will. Just don't walk away from us." I stepped back, shaking my head. "You've already walked away, Kelly. You just didn't tell me about it until now. Everything is different." And it was. It had to be. I couldn't stay in this house with these memories, with these lies. I needed to leave. I needed space to think, to breathe, to figure out what my next move was. But I couldn't do it alone. I had Barbara's help now. I had the evidence I needed to take down Paul Evans and destroy everything he had worked for. It was time to make a plan. But as I looked at Kelly, as she cried in front of me, I realized something. Maybe I wasn't the one who needed to make the first move. Maybe it was time for her to prove her loyalty, to prove that she could make things right. Because if I stayed, I would never trust her again. And without trust, there was nothing. The next few days were a blur of action. I contacted the FBI agent I had worked with before, a man named Gary, and gave him all the evidence Barbara had provided. I knew that with this information, we could finally take Paul Evans down. But even as I prepared for the inevitable confrontation, a part of me wondered if I was doing the right thing. The press had already started to pick up on the story. The whispers about Paul's affair with Kelly had spread like wildfire, and soon, everyone would. No, but for me, this wasn't about the scandal. It was about something much more personal. It was about the man who had betrayed me in the worst possible way. And it was about the woman who had made me feel like a fool. The days leading up to the inevitable confrontation were filled with uncertainty. I had the evidence, I had the plan, and I was ready to finally take control of my life again. But something in my gut told me that the ending wasn't going to be as simple as I thought. I had convinced myself that confronting Kelly and destroying Paul's career was the only way forward. But as the days passed, I realized something unexpected. I wasn't doing this for justice or revenge. I was doing it to heal. The moment Kelly came home from her trip to Pittsburgh, everything hit me. She was excited, naive, like nothing had changed. She kissed me on the cheek, asking about the day, completely unaware of what had been swirling in my mind for the past week. I could see the way she tried to pretend like nothing was wrong, but everything had changed. And in that moment, I realized I couldn't continue down this path of destruction. It wasn't just about Kelly anymore. It was about me, my future, and my sanity. I had to make a choice. Would I keep fighting, letting the anger consume me, or would I step away from the wreckage and rebuild my life? I walked into the living room that night, holding the photos of Kelly and Paul, the evidence that could tear apart everything I had built. I looked at her, standing in the doorway, waiting for me to say something. My heart ached, but I knew what I had to do. "Kelly," I said, my voice steady, "I know about the affair. I know about Paul." Her face went pale. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Instead, she collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. For the first time since I had overheard her conversation with Olivia, I saw the raw pain in her eyes. It wasn't just guilt. It was fear, regret, and the realization that everything had unraveled beyond repair. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I was weak, Bob. I was stupid." I didn't respond immediately. I just stood there, watching her, trying to process everything. The betrayal, the lies, the pain. It was all there. But in that moment, I couldn't bring myself to destroy her. I couldn't bring myself to expose her for everything she had done. Not yet. I sat down next to her. "I don't know what to do," I said softly. "I don't know if I can keep going with this." She looked at me, her eyes filled with desperation. "Please, Bob, I love you. I know I messed up, but I'm willing to do anything. I'll prove to you that I'm committed to us, to our family." For the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward. But it wasn't going to be easy. Trust couldn't be rebuilt overnight. "I need time," I said finally. "I need to figure out what's best for me." 2 weeks later, after a lot of soul-searching and difficult conversations, I decided to take a step back. I couldn't fix everything immediately, but I could focus on myself, on my work, and on rebuilding the life I had once imagined. The FBI investigation into Paul was moving forward, and soon he would face the consequences of his actions. As for Kelly, I wasn't sure what the future held. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of control over my own life. The unexpected twist came when I least expected it. Barbara, the daughter of the man who had destroyed my life, called me. She had gone to the FBI with her own information that could take down not just Paul but expose a web of corruption within his political network. I hadn't seen it coming, but Barbara had turned out to be the ally I never knew I needed. "We have the leverage now," she said, her voice steady but with a hint of pride. "Your life, your future. It's in your hands now. We can end this." For the first time in months, I felt a sense of relief. The power I had been searching for was finally in my grasp. But it was more than that. I had learned a valuable lesson through all of this. Sometimes, the hardest part isn't exposing the lies or confronting the betrayal. It's choosing to move forward, regardless of how painful that process might be.